Governor Bobber. I like Good Day Doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good Friday evening, everyone. You're watching Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. We're joined by our usual doctors, Dr. Irvine and Dr. Thornton. Welcome, everyone. It's been another bad week for Joe Biden, and 6 more weeks left in winter. So all in all, it's not bad.
Are we doing our Groundhog Day recap?
Yeah, and we got our Shamrock Shakes are a week away, 2 weeks away, I think now. Yeah, 2 weeks or even less than that.
So my wife is in Utah, so it was funny. We're having this conversation, and she asked about the Shamrock Shake, and I said, "No, we've got about 11 more days to go." We've been. Is to have my wife actually ask about it. I could, She remembers last year and the Shamrock Shake deliveries and everything like that. So
yeah, you'll be the 18th is our Shamrock Shake show. So I know Jason mentioned he will be on the show for the Shamrock Shake show. But
another reason. Oh, was this thing you posted?
Yeah, the groundhog died.
Yeah. Milltown Mel, the official groundhog, he died like right before Groundhog Day.
So it's not Toxicani Phil?
Yeah.
So they have a backup like the stand-in groundhog for that then or something?
He's got an understudy. Understudy comes out. And now he's probably training the new understudy for the next year, so when he can get around,
How long does the average groundhog live?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I'm sure one of our smart viewers should tell us, or they'll Google it and tell us.
Yeah,
like Bill Murray tried to kill it like 1,000 times in Groundhog Day and didn't die.
Yeah. How did that movie ever end? I never get to the end of the movie.
He got the girl. I think that was the thing. He was like, timed it because you treated everyone so badly. So he finally supposedly within 1 day, wooed, his coworker and finally got out of the loop.
Does he go back? Does it ever go back to normal? It's always like February.
Yeah, no, it goes back to normal at the end.
Okay, that's good. I like how
it's not like Twilight Zone where it stays in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. And by the way,
that was one of the funniest movies I'd ever seen, though. It was just good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys watched, but last weekend, as I mentioned, it was 116th birthday of Toho Studios, and in honor of that, Comet TV, which is over-the-air digital channel you can get. I believe ABC runs it, but they had a Godzilla marathon Sunday. It was great. It was some of the best.
Godzilla,
they actually, I tell you, Godzilla,
the black and white Godzillas.
Godzilla King of the Monsters is good, but if you watch, I don't know, Don, if you ever watch Gojira in its original Japanese, I feel like I'm one of those Klingon things. Have you looked Hamlet? It's great. It's an original Klingon, but but Gojira is a much darker movie than Godzilla. I mean, you think it's bad? They show the caskets and the bodies and all the carnage from Godzilla, but if you watch Gojira is like really bad. You show how it's a lot darker. It's like probably 100 times darker than Godzilla King of the Monsters. Then they get into my favorite era of Godzilla, where Godzilla is the defender of Japan and saves Japan from space monsters and so on.
Yeah, I've got 3 series of Godzilla. I've got the Heisei collection, which goes from 1989 to 89. I've got the Millennium ones, which go from 99 to 2004, and then the current ones that go
Showa.
That go from 2014 to 2021. So
no, the Showa era is the original. That's the.
Oh yeah, I don't have those yet. Yeah, that's the one I'm missing is the original one.
Yeah, those are the best ones actually. Yeah. If you ask me, I remember back when we were kids, Jeff. Channel 7 used to have the 4 o'clock movie, and I would always wait. Every year twice a year they'd have like Beast Week and they'd have Monster Week, and it would be 5 days of and they'd always start it with Godzilla versus King Kong, and that's an interesting movie. But before we go off into the real issues of the day, but in the American version, King Kong wins, but in the Japanese version, they have Godzilla winning that fight.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a kid, on Sundays we had the Kung Fu Sundays, so it was always the original, like this is I think prior to Bruce Lee, the Dragon series. This is like the even some black and white Kung Fu movies that was just like all.
And then on they had on Saturdays they had the creature feature, and that's that's where I saw the first time I saw Godzilla King of the Monsters was on there, and it was a double. It was always a double feature. You get Godzilla. Then the second was Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, which basically Godzilla fights a giant irradiated shrimp, which is funny.
See,
but anyways, so now it's serious topics.
My childhood was filled with a lot of Ultraman. Okay.
Ultraman
yes.
And Johnny Sacco. Was that your era? Or was that before your time?
I don't know. I mean, when I think about things,
Johnny Sacco was the one that had the giant robot, right? Yeah.
I just remember watching lots of Ultraman from that perspective, and lots of Speed Racer.
Yes.
Yes. I remember
Speed Racer and Racer X.
Yes. And
the
then they had Then they had Star Blazers, which was after that was the 80s era. That was also really good.
Growing up with a Dark Shadows fan, which I really had a hard time getting into with Barnabas Collins. There we go. Craig Yoakum, Ultraman, all right.
Yes.
That's 2 votes for Ultraman.
Oh, wow, we got a bunch of... Yeah.
Yeah, the other stuff is those...
But they had Ultraman, they brought Ultraman in the 90s, right? But he could only stay Ultraman for like, I think, 5 minutes because of the environment was so bad. So he couldn't be Ultraman. He had to become a human again. That was the 90s Ultraman. Yeah. But in the Japanese version of Ultraman, Godzilla was one of his sidekicks. Like when Ultraman really got into trouble, Godzilla would show up to help him. But
nuclear pollution was a good thing.
Yeah. Well, Godzilla fought the smog monster. Hedra was the smog monster. And but if you ever, I gotta send you guys the opening clips. That is very 60-ish, so to speak. And then the Showa era Godzilla movies, they also got into the whole James Bond version of it. So they had the spies along with the monsters. They also had some spy stuff going on at the same time, which is funny. They had the guy that played Tanaka was actually in one of the Godzilla movies as well, which I thought was kind of funny. From Never Seen You Only Live Twice, I believe it was. Yeah. But anyways, let's get to our real features. I think we're probably losing. Although, who knows? Maybe we're getting more viewers as a result.
It looked like Craig liked it just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, now to the not so fun stuff. Let's talk about the job numbers were pretty good today.
Yeah.
The job numbers
but inflation is
well above expectations, but that this is always the thing. I mean, it doesn't really, the presidents and everything like that too. The top line is one thing, but then you have to start looking at other things, that are still going on, and the economy still has problems, right? Right.
Yeah, inflation. And did I tell you guys this? This is Coke Zero, right? They also have a vanilla Coke Zero. They also have a cherry vanilla Coke Zero. They also have Fanta Zeros. And you know something? I can't find those in the stores anymore because of Joe Biden. And I'm not a fan of Pepsi. I don't like the taste of Pepsi. Pepsi just tastes horrible. I know this is Coca-Cola. And now I'm not supposed to eat Hershey's either because Hershey's gone a little bit. Then again, I'm not too disappointed by that. Then you've got, my favorites here is M&M's, and they've gone woke. But this is a bag of M&M's they're identifying as Reese's Pieces.
I don't know. That's not quite the Reese's Pieces orange, I recall.
No, but they identify because they got peanut butter inside.
if we were truly purists and took our values and said, oh, you'd only eat or support buy the products from companies that are you meet 100% litmus test on purity for conservative values or whatever, we would be left with almost nothing.
Nothing. That's exactly right. We'd all be going to Wendy's and
I'd be spending all my
buying stuff from Amway.
Well, even if I get Apple, because Apple, I mean, there's still issues with how they source labor in China. So
actually, we wouldn't be able to have a cell phone if we held to because Samsung very not friendly to the right. We wouldn't be able to be on the internet. We can't use Google. We can't use YouTube. That's why I use the best products out there. Because
we'd have right-wing dial-up.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I don't know if you guys remember this. Don, you probably remember this because AIM may have also been a reseller. Free Congress, when I worked for NET Free Congress, they had Paul Weyrich would push this other telephone service that was not AT&T and Verizon. And the commercial we have, Verizon and AT&T are the biggest sponsors of the porn 1-900 numbers call done by Verizon and actually it was Bell Atlantic, not even Verizon then. It was AT&T and Bell Atlantic, and they were pushing that. And the big thing there was there was a long distance company, phone company, and it was I forget who ran it. I want to say it may have been some guy out of Wisconsin that was a Free Congress supporter. But anyways, there was stuff like that, and it does not. It's hard to it's hard to be that much of a niche market. I mean,
right. My recollection was something along the lines of what you're saying there, Dwight. I do remember, I think that at one point in time, what AIM may have done is we may have switched our long distance service to this company that basically, where I think we got a slightly better rate, but the idea is that it would support kind of conservative Christian values.
Yep.
And I think actually what I remember from one program was that if it was an affiliate program, like the credit card companies, when you could brand your credit card with AIM or Free Congress.
Yeah, back when MBNA was around.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. And so that, by pushing that out, if, the AIM supporters subscribe to that service, we would get a cut of that. And that would help that, those were the days, right? When we actually had long distance charges when you were paying 30 cents a minute to call long distance thereabouts, before I mean, if you said long distance to an 18-year-old, they're like, what are you talking about? Right?
Yeah, it's like you tell Ryan if we were to tell Ryan and Jason, about long distance, they think we're crazy. What are you talking about, old people? Long distance, what's that? I remember Herndon was a long distance call, and so was Frederick actually for us.
Yeah, that was it. Places that are really not that far in distance, but because of the way things were set up, is that you called certain places in Virginia and Maryland. Maybe Baltimore was long distance.
Baltimore was long distance. I think there was points like around Savage was also a long distance call. I could be wrong, but Savage was a long distance.
A telecom engineer back in like the 90s, and so I had to deal with like both the intra-LATA and then inter-LATA, and then the long distance calls. So there were all kinds of different zones. And you're right. There were there was not you had local operators for certain zones that owned like a local area, and then you had exchanges that you have to go through to switch between like a local area, and then you could be like in the same state but like a different local area, and so you have to pay a different charge for that. And then if the long distance is stuff that's typically out of state, but it's actually sometimes more expensive to call between two areas that are in the same state than to make a long distance call, because the inter-LATA charges sometimes are more expensive than the long distance charges. But yeah, glad that's over.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like
whatever happened to 411, right?
I think it's still around.
I remember when I went up to dial
3. Somebody, or you get Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri.
I may have thrown it, but I got a phone book in the mail. Okay, a phone book, and it was only like this thick, and it was like half. It was like it was white pages,
The white
yellow
pages and the
pages.
yellow pages.
Yeah, and I think it may have been tossed because I don't think anybody uses a phone book anymore.
Yeah, I mean, any of us older members, does anybody really miss the phone books? Because I mean, my memories are. I mean, I remember the phone books in my house, which was just we were just getting the yellow pages and the white pages and for area, and then my father always wanted to get one for DC as well because he would make some other calls. But at the office, we had to request multiple copies of Maryland, DC, Virginia,
Yep.
white pages and yellow pages. So we probably had 15 or 20 copies of some of these things because we wanted everybody in the office so they could have their own stack of phone books so they wouldn't ask somebody else for that stuff. It's just how the world has changed so much. I mean, it's just.
I mean, it's like okay. My dad would hold on to phone books. I don't know why. He'd just keep the phone books for like 5 years. He'd have like 5 years, and those were like big phone books. I remember the yellow pages came in 2 volumes. You could,
Yeah, they just got bigger and bigger and bigger and stuff like that.
Well, that's
I mean,
advertise on the yellow pages. I mean, and even think about like the early internet. When you think about like GeoCities and other places like that, that was basically like just yellow pages online, is what it was.
Right.
Well, it's funny you should
Google,
mention
there was basically
GeoCities.
Yeah, there was just pages that said, here are advertising services. So you had like one site you'd go to that was just listed everyone's, different services. But yeah, things have just changed so much.
Well, I was part of a focus group for GeoCities, by the way. This is back when I was in college. It's funny. I went up to somewhere in Greenbelt, and they paid me $50 for about an hour of my time to tell them what I thought about GeoCities.
And you said, if you own stock from the IPO, sell it now.
And then I used to get calls, and I used to like go to those every now and then. Like there was another one on. You guys remember Snapple and Clearly Canadian and those flavored waters?
Yeah,
Mystic.
Yep, Snapple's still around. I mean,
yeah, Mystic is. This was doing a testing for market study for Mystic, and we got to sample the Mystic product. I'm like, this is really good. It's and I go, it's funny. This one person there goes, you don't even need to pay me for this. This is like really good. You just give me a couple of cases of this stuff, and I'll be happy. I'm like, you're getting $100, Was it 100 or 50? It was 100 or 50, one of them.
Hey, so
the $100 ones.
Is this comment by Pat Nolan referring to GeoCities?
Is that why it failed? Because Dwight did the study, or?
Yeah, right. That's easily tying the failure of GeoCities to Dwight.
No, basically, I was there to collect the money. Then I also did one for Yahoo. Remember, Yahoo had their local thing, like it was like Digital Cities, but it was like Yahoo's version of it, where you'd be like, you could do like Washington, New York, whatever, .yahoo. And then you get all the information about those cities, like restaurants and stuff like that.
No, I don't remember that too much, but
What was the name of the company that Mark Cuban sold? Wasn't it like a thing or something? Do you remember that?
Radio or something like that.
Yeah. What did Mark Cuban
probably?
And he made, he made a ton of money.
Yeah, he sold it to AOL, if I'm not mistaken.
So I mean, I'm trying to see if we can find out what that was. But anyway, I mean, back to the economy. So we, the jobs numbers were way better than they expected, but it really
broadcast.com.
That's it. It didn't.
That was it.
Didn't affect. It didn't right. It didn't really move the stock market in a positive fashion because we still have inflationary pressure. And we still have these chronic job shortages, even with a labor participation rate, ticking upwards. It's still not enough. This is still a problem for the Democrats. It's a problem for Biden. We're 9 months, 9 months away from the election, and it's not a pretty picture for the Democrats here going into 2022. Except I will say, I don't know if you've seen the same stories or not. But the Democrats have really played a very heavy hand on redistricting, where they control states, and they have really played hardball, and they have really worked it to try to even the playing field for places. Your beloved New York is, if they adopt that map,
Yeah.
they lost one seat anyway, right? For after the census, but Republicans could
Just think, if they didn't
seats.
put all the old people in nursing homes and let them die, they would not have lost a seat. It was only by 17 people, and over 17 people died in the nursing homes during COVID in New York City. But Democrats are, I mean, I don't know if you saw this, Prince George's County had their maps thrown out by the courts because they were unfairly drawn. So
is that for
PG County?
Were they redistricting their county?
Councilmanic, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and evidently they redistricted 3 of the councilmen out of their districts. Which I'm like, that's like a whole new level of craziness, when Democrats start to take their, eat their own, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think we're gonna
it's controlled by Democrats. I mean, it's like, what are they doing? just now
it's
playing.
We
don't like that Democrat, so we're going to redraw the district to get rid of that.
Yeah,
Democrat.
That's pretty much it. I mean, they did that. They primaried Anthony Muse several years ago because he was against gay marriage in the state of Maryland, and you can't be a Democrat and not sing from the same songbooks, So they went after Anthony Muse. They took him out. I mean, they even went after Glenn Ivey and his wife at one point. And so we've got Maryland's an interest. Maryland's, I think we're headed to court too with our lines that the Democrats have basically took out their fingerprints and came up with things like the Barney District.
You love
that they drew. Yeah, well, I can't think of the dinosaur's name from Toy Story. You know what I'm talking about, this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what his name is, so I'll call it Barney.
Well, gerrymandering's always been an issue, but it seems like it's one of those things that, both sides complain about the other side when it comes to redrawing districts, and I don't know if there's a great solution, because ultimately there are benefits and drawbacks to having consolidated interests within a district. I mean, there are reasons that can be used politically, but there's also reasons that can be used.
I think if
we say, we are representing a certain region of people. So I don't know. It certainly can be abused, and I hate to see it when it's like these maps are drawn arbitrarily, where it looks like the only reason it's drawn that way is just to change the makeup of the seats.
Mm-hmm. And I really think with these, we'd be better off giving a 5-year-old a set of finger paints and telling them to draw eight different colors on the Maryland map. It'd be better and more fair than what the state legislature draws up.
Yeah, well, why can't you just use a computer algorithm to draw it? Just leave it being impartial. If you want to use the census information, then just create, the maps based upon that, and just leave it, impartial.
That just makes too much sense.
That would be the ideal. That would be the ideal world. The thing is that there's just not enough politicians that want to be impartial when it comes to drawing districts. To the victor go the spoils. Though apparently the Republicans, when they're redrawing the districts, they're trying to enhance
the dinosaur.
And protect
Thank you,
Republicans. But the Democrats are taking a cleaver, and they're saying, okay, the map looks really bad for us for 2022, and their only weapon they have right now is to try to wipe out as many Republicans, in these democratically controlled states, to try to see if they can't, just minimize their losses. I mean, depending upon how this all shakes out in the end, when all the maps become official, you may they may find on paper that the presumed wipeout of the Democrats will not be quite the big wipeout that people predicted, because the Democrats will have been very effective in their gerrymander, and they will have just lessened their risk on that.
But the good news is we have majority of the state legislatures are controlled by Republicans.
Yeah, but here's the thing that really gets me. So the Republicans control these things, and then the Republicans do exactly what the Democrats have done. But then the Democrats sue, they go to court, and then the court rules against the Republicans and forces them back and says, okay, well, we'll throw together a commission and we'll let them draw it. And then all the states should have a real independent commission that really has no political interest in it. It's just looking for fair, redistricting, and just do it. But we've seen plenty. Virginia had the same problem. Virginia had an independent commission, and they basically were deadlocked, and they got thrown to the courts. And that's not the court's responsibility is to settle, is to deal with that. The state legislature should. It is their power. But if they, Eric Holder supposedly, has this project about to fair redistricting. But it's nothing but a Democrat,
It's only fair for the Democrats when it's not fair for Republicans. That's
he doesn't. Yeah,
their definition of
Eric
fair.
Holder's group couldn't care less about Republicans getting a fair shake. He just wants to make sure the Democrats get what they label to be the fair redistricting, which is just an overwhelming gerrymander for them.
But we know where Eric Holder lives. My friend who I refer to as the Sherpa. His dad's neighbor is Eric Holder. And it's funny.
I'm sure
down there, I tried to get him to.
I'm sure.
What's that?
He's house probably, right?
Yeah, in DC, yeah. It's both right over. It's near where the Citibank is on. That's not Connecticut Avenue? That's Massachusetts Avenue, I believe. I could be wrong. It's Mass Avenue or MacArthur Boulevard, one or the other. It's someplace down there. But Eric Holder is just a horrible, horrible human being, frankly. He teams up with George Soros for these great DAs, like we have the one in New York who wants to do zero bail. The zero bail. He wants if you don't kill somebody with a gun, you can just walk without paying a bail. It's extremism like that. The LA, San Francisco, where you got these smash and grab robberies where they're all running around with cash. Oh, we got $900 worth of stuff. We're good to go out, and then we can come back tomorrow and steal another $900 worth of stuff because they're not going to prosecute for anything under $900 or less. And it's Eric Holder, George Soros, and the left. When is law and order? How has law and order become such a race issue? It is law and order. Justice is blind and equal to all, frankly. It is 2022. I am sorry. Stop playing the damn race cards. People go to, you do, what does Beretta say? If you can't do the crime, don't do, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. There you go. It's like, I'm sorry. I have no, honestly, I know a lot of people like to use as an argument when I say something. They go, well, Les Mis, the guy stole a loaf of bread. Yeah, the guy was a terrorist too. If you think about it, he wasn't on the side of the king. He was one of the revolutionaries. And all that. All
Les Mis
Les
is a different kind of environment. So if you want
all Les Mis does is glorify smash and grab robberies.
Well, part of the story was talking about Reformation and the whole French Revolution too. You can say whether that was warranted or not, but I don't know. The thing I'd say about the justice system is that the bail system is broken right now. It's usually set so arbitrarily high that the people that can't pay it are forced to stay in jail and can risk their jobs for a situation where they may be innocent. But so I think bail should really be set responsibly for the nature of the crime and not be and we look at a person's ability to pay. It's not designed to be to necessarily hold someone indefinitely until a trial.
No, but here's the thing: we do have bail bonds. That show Fall Guy where he was a bounty hunter. When bail bonds, when people skip bond, he'd go after and chase them.
Well, sure, but you assume that everyone qualifies with that. That's almost like getting a credit check. Just because bonds? There are bail bonds, organizations doesn't mean that everyone gets bail.
Because I think you only have to come up with maybe 2% of whatever the bail is. I don't know, or maybe 10%. 10%,
10% is what you're owed regardless. So if you do a bond, then you basically 10% of what you pay is given to the bondsman, regardless of whether you win or lose. So there is that cost. But if they're going to cover you or not is based upon they just automatically say we're going to cover you. It's a private organization. It's not government funded or anything, and it's basically they get to choose whether they will hold you. Represent with bond money. a lot of people will borrow from friends and family, but I've heard a lot of cases where people, you know, are just either they're young or they're just in a bad situation and they can't afford bonds. And so in those cases, again, I think that we have the technology. We have things like, you know, the bracelets on the ankles. We've got other ways to enforce at home, you know, well, not jurisdiction, but, you know, basically staying at home or geofencing people in. There are ways to deal with this. I think we just need to deal with it responsibly, so the people that are the true offenders, you know, get appropriate bond issued to them. But the people that are the minor infractors don't have their livelihood stripped away just because they're waiting for a trial.
But I think if somebody who shoots it, go ahead, Don.
I mean, to Jeff's point, I mean, at least I would think that maybe something along the lines of where, I mean, you know, with the judges, I mean, you know, crimes, there are sentencing guidelines that kind of say, here's what has been determined as kind of the range of what this sentence should be for this particular crime, you know, and then you have to kind of decide upon the circumstances and the severity to whether or not it's lesser or you have the lower end or the higher end or whatever. I mean, you know, I think I don't know of such a system for bail where there are there are guidelines. I mean, I think it is very arbitrary that the judge, you know, they decide based on what they hear, set something. You know, it is supposed to be somewhat punitive in the sense that it is, if you committed a real heinous crime, you know, you're going to have a bail that, you know, the judge probably figures you cannot meet so that you're around. But for low level crimes, you know, that still require bail, you know, there probably ought to be some kind of at least guideline saying this is the range. It should not exceed this amount or whatever. You know, rather than having it completely open to judgment on that, because, you know, but on the other hand, right? I mean, the other, you know, so what the liberals do, you know, they want to go out and they eliminate the cash bond, you know, requirement, and then people wind up getting back on the street with crimes that probably they should have stayed in jail, and then that created all kinds of other problems. I mean, yeah, we have a lot of.
I mean, to your point, I think, you know, there's got to be some middle ground. Like, you know, if in cases where people, I mean, the whole thing about bond was basically your ability to guarantee your appearance in court. That was what the bond is there for. And so people, based upon flight risk, have bonds set to say, like, you know, what's the risk of this person? You know, if they don't show up for court and have to be issued a warrant, a bench warrant, you know, what's it worth financially for them to want to show up to court? You know, so there has to be enough of a deterrent so that they won't just skip out on court appearance, but not so much that, you know, it really burdens them that, you know, they can't pay it.
But I do think.
Go ahead.
I do think, though, with the whole bail process, I think if you shoot somebody, you murder somebody, if you're a drug dealer or you should have zero bail. No, you get to sit in jail. You get to stay in timeout until you get before a judge, frankly.
Well, sure. In some cases, it warrants it. But we're not
talking about kids that shoplift a pack of gum from the CVS, you know.
Right. But I mean, again, there are you know, situations too where it's like, you know, if you're a person of interest where there's no direct evidence and they're saying, hey, you know, we believe that you killed this person. And I'm like, I wasn't even in the area, and you've got a bench trial, you know, in or a court appearance in like 2 weeks, and they, you know, hold you and say, well, we think it's a murder case, so we're not going to let you have any bail. And there's really no evidence at that point they can present. They're just saying, well, we believe you are the person who did this. I mean, again, it can be abused in both cases. So I think there just needs to be discretion and judges that can fairly look at the situation and not just say, okay, you know, we're trying to either, you know, crack down so hard that we don't give anyone any leeway, or just let everyone kind of just let go on reconnaissance and then basically just open court if they want to show up. So I think there's some middle ground, but to have, you know, hardline policies in either direction, you know, it's too gray an area, I think, to really say that there should be one policy which fits everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, you know, and you know, the other problem with the judicial system is that we haven't found a solution to unclogging the courts, right? We have just got a tremendous backlog in the courts for all kinds of, you know, issues and crimes and things like that. You know, and people who have been, you know, been arrested and, you know, they deserve a reasonably speedy adjudication of these things. and not have to wait months and months and months. I mean, that's been part of the problem. I have really no sympathy for the people who came out on January 6th and tore up the Capitol and whatnot, but a lot of them have been languishing for a year and still haven't really seen the light of day. That's not fair, in that case. So something needs to give on that, but this is where our system is just still needs a lot of work. But that can be said about a lot of things in America, unfortunately. But
well, I mean, to your point, Dwight, about the levels of crime. If we got somebody who's charged of murder, that's obviously a much more serious case. But if you have somebody,
I think repeat offenders should be treated differently than first-time offenders. If you look like
vandalism, petty theft, disrupting the police, domestic cases, those are lower-level offenses against the whole populace. So there could be like magistrate judges or other judges that are lower than the normal district court judges that deal with the lower cases, and the cases where it's you can always appeal to a higher court. That's always been part of it, but give people the ability to adjudicate certain cases on a lower level for lower level offenses, like traffic court. I mean, who needs to see a judge for a ticket? You get pulled over, it should be pretty clear cut. If you want to argue the case, that's fine, but you don't need to have a full judge deal with this issue. You can have a lower judge deal with the specific cases of the traffic infringement to free up the courts. And you've got so many cases now with the landowner tenant kind of arrangement where you got people that are late on rent and other issues that in that vein. If we can deal with those, use special courts or whatever, we could potentially clear up the logjam, because obviously we have certain types of cases that should be easy to adjudicate, but we need to have a system in place to deal with those cases so they don't tie up the resources of the more experienced judges. In my opinion, that's how I would deal with it.
Plus, I think people don't have a full complement of judges everywhere either. I mean, there's always court.
I mean, everyone's.
Well, sure. That's always been the case. And when you have elected judges, most of them are just lawyers. But the point is, if you get someone sworn in who is able to adjudicate certain cases, then we can do that. We can hire appoint judges for certain types of cases and say, okay, we're gonna, we need to have X number of judges that adjudicate on these issues. Let's have an open hearing, election.
I mean, the courts aren't immune from worker shortages also,
Right. We can elect judges to handle, a shortage and this kind of thing. And then, whatever. I mean, again, I don't think it's a problem, because most judges are lawyers, and some of them even practicing lawyers. So again, I think there is a solution there if we really wanted to address it. It just needs to be one of those things we look at, sincerely and figure out what is the solution to this. But I think we can do that.
And let's that'll be the final word. Let's move on to Whoopi Goldberg-Guinan, the bartender of 10-4 on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Whoopi Goldberg, she made one of the most insensitive anti-Semitic remarks I've heard in a long time. And she got a slap on the wrist, so she's put in timeout for 2 weeks, and she'll be back spewing her hate speech. And but that is that did Rush Limbaugh say anything worse than what she said? Rush Limbaugh got he didn't get fired. He resigned from his ESPN show because of all the flack. I think there was talk where Rush was going to be part owner of the St. Louis Rams, or wherever the Rams were at that point. I think it was the St. Louis Rams, and people they basically blocked him out of even being part of the ownership group. I think Whoopi should be fired by ABC, frankly. I mean, she still has her gig on Star Trek Picard. It's not like she needs this job, She's got a lot of other avenues and so on. And I just think,
but it is a platform for her. She really is the main host. She's the one who basically runs the show, kind of almost like the moderator. So it is her platform, and she has a lot of fans. She's been around for a long time and everything like that. But this problem that we see, with people like this, particularly that have got really just a background where after a while, they're considered to be expert and knowledgeable on all these issues, and then they start spewing the stuff, and then we have, there someone like this. Okay, so she's a liberal, she gets a 2-week suspension. If this had been a conservative, if Elizabeth Hasselbeck, when she was on the View, if she'd said that, they would have called for her head, and she would have been out on her hand, quick. And because the conservatives always get the plug will always get pulled on them much quicker than the liberals. The liberals really don't like to practice kind of cancel culture on their own. Even for these kind of egregious things. But it was just kind of a stupid there, to make in and of itself. You have, to me, as I said, you need to tread very carefully if you're going to talk about the Holocaust and Nazis. Okay.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. Tread very carefully.
And let me tell you. Yeah, and this comes back to we were having lunch. This is over back when we could go out to lunch when I was at a meeting at Goddard, and there was somebody's birthday, I think, so we took them out to lunch, right? So there's this one little Zoomer there, and she makes a comment like this: "Why do we still blame the Germans for the Holocaust? Actually, it's more like why do we still do this? Blame them." And my response was, I go, "Why does America still get blamed for slavery? And then somebody said, "Did you really go there? Like, I'm the bad guy for?" I mean, I'm sorry. What she said was very insensitive, frankly. As having family members that are of the Jewish faith and so on, it is unacceptable, frankly. Comments like that saying, "Why are we still blaming the Germans?" Because they did it. That's why we still blame the Germans for the Holocaust. Because they did it. That's why. And America still gets that bum rap about slavery. We've made strides, moved forward, but that's part of our record, we had slavery, but we've done things to fix it. I mean, not saying the Germans have not done to atone themselves, but I mean, how do you atone after wiping out over 10 million Jews?
Right. So, I mean, you're right that this is something you tread carefully on, but I hate using the term blame because, I mean, this is part of history. They've always been, and whether it's been racial or cultural or religious, there's always been wars and holocausts and cleansings, basically because one group of people feel the other group of people need to be cleansed out. So whether it is the Nazis trying to cleanse out the Jews, or the white American slave owners trying to oppress the slaves, or it's been I've mentioned to other people about, like, there's places in the Middle East, like Darfur, and even in Africa, there's been a lot of, say black on black, kind of issues where these are, either called ethnic groups or other groups that, that are basically want to wipe out totally the other group. And these aren't like color based, but they are either cultural or other basis for like different
caste-based,
So again, it's one of those things that you got to be careful, because it's not just about the color of your skin. It's about what you believe in and your heritage. And when some people want to, destroy that, that's where I think, if you identify as, this or this, I mean, we still have issues, I think, even like identifying and recognizing like the Armenian genocide. So, I mean, there are still issues where people just kind of wipe things over and say this never happened. So we shouldn't do that. I don't think we need to blame, like, generation after generation, say, we're never going to forgive you for doing this.
No, but my point to the young Zoomer was, she makes a stupid comment like, why do the Germans get blamed for the Holocaust? And well, because they did it. That's why they get blamed for it. It's like saying, why does...
But that's like, at what point do you stop holding it over their head that, we're never going to forgive you? Like you said, I mean, it's one of those things that, there needs to be a path for, not even forgiveness, but just for, recognizing the fact. I mean, the as far as I know now, I mean, the modern day Germans are hypercritical of anything Nazi. I mean, they don't even allow video games to depict Nazis in their culture. They are so, like, hypersensitive to anything that's based upon Nazism that they will.
I remember Wolfenstein was banned
right, I mean,
in Germany.
they are so much against it that you can't even like talk about it. They will just like shut it down. So I mean, again, what else can they do to like move forward? I mean, I understand this is going to be something that's going to be forever associated with them, but at what point do we say, you know, we understand this happened, but you
okay, it's like this.
It's like
this. Okay, it's like this. If you've got let's say you got a murderer. Okay, he paid his debts to society, but there's still going to be people that are going to say, hey, you know, he murdered someone many years ago. Like there's episode of my favorite shows, The Jeffersons, where a guy that murdered his wife wrote a book and he's dating Florence the maid, and they find out about it. It's like, you know, here's the thing. Some people accept it. Some people still say, you know, he's a murderer, and you can't change human behavior that way.
Okay, so that's one thing too. I mean, talking about individuals, but we're talking about like generational sins where people like, you know, like the children of the children of the children, like you hear in the Bible, like, you know, this is going to be held against you for like, you know, for like 7 generations. You know, there's going to be some limit of like, you know, when you start holding against them. And again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be recognition for this. I mean, having recognition that this happened, both for the Germans and for us, we need to understand what we did so we don't repeat the past.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
I want to say I think most Americans understand. I think there isn't okay, maybe the exception of a guy that just put his hat in the ring to be Attorney General of the state of Maryland. But most people agree slavery was bad. Most people agree segregation was bad. Discrimination is bad. We and I think we've evolved, progressed, or whatever you want to say, as a country. You know, it's nice to see the Democrats catching up with us on the right, who are always anti-slavery and anti-discrimination, you know, finally coming along to the party. It's like they finally became anti-communists a few years ago when President Trump was in the White House, but now they're back to being pro-communist now that he's out of the office. But they, you know, it's like the Republican Party's always been on the right side of history, while the Democrat Party has a record of being on the wrong side of history. They basically were they were pro-slavery. They were against emancipation. They were against ending Jim Crow laws. And they have the audacity to say you could be on the side of Abe Lincoln or you could be on the Bull Connor was a Democrat. Senator Fordyce was a Democrat. George Wallace was a Democrat. And it's one of those, it's like, you know,
I want to be careful there because I don't want to paint all Democrats as being, you know,
most of them are, though. Most of them actually are, if you think about it.
Well, again, I want to, you may do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to paint Democrats as being racist intrinsically or Republicans being as non-racist. I think it's one of those things where, you know, a lot of it is how you have grown up and what you're used to. I mean, a lot of people, and again, this is why you got to be careful because, you know, there are obviously talks where it's like, you know, some people want every white person to apologize for the sins of our fathers kind of things, even if we weren't directly involved. And then there's other people who just want to be open up front and understand and teach about what happened in an open framework and say, you know, we recognize this happened. You know, this is what we did. We have, you know, caused harm to a group of people. We have done things like tried to provide some equity in reparations and stuff for what we've done. We have to understand too that things are still not equal. I mean, that a lot of those people in those situations are still not to the point where they should be. And again, I'm not going to get into all of the, you know, socioeconomic issues there, but you know, I think we're being honest and frank, a lot of people have been disenfranchised for generations, and that is something where it is still an issue where there is a gap in our socioeconomics where certain classes of people are still disenfranchised. And again, you know, it's a complex issue, so it's something we can't cover, you know, all in one session. But I think again, I think it's a lot of it is Democrats. I mean, look at places like Chicago, which is like all democratically controlled, and you see you know, how it's gerrymandered so that school districts that have money don't share money with school districts that don't have money. That, you know, the rich left don't want to give their money to the poor left. So there is. It's like that.
I mean, you look at this. You look at Montgomery County. I mean, you've got the western part of the county, which is, you know, more affluent, right? They don't want to share money with the less affluent schools. I mean, Montgomery County, though, then again, it's kind of a relative thing, being less affluent and being affluent. Less affluent, you can afford a BMW. If you're affluent, you can afford a BMW and a Mercedes Benz. That's how the disparity in Montgomery County is that, affluent and less affluent. It's like, I've got 2 cars or I've got 4 cars, So it's all relative. But at the end of the day, I will say we've got, there is Whoopi, if she were a Republican, she would have been fired by now. And by the way, there's a whole class of people out there who probably refer to her as Guinan when they see her on The View.
Well, I certainly think she should be censored. I think that's appropriate.
No, I think there's a lot more. I mean, you haven't seen some of the Star Trek memes where there was an episode where they thought Captain Picard was a god, and this one primitive Vulcan goes, "It's the Picard. The walls move out of his way. He is, And there are many Trekkies who, when they see Patrick Stewart in anything other than Star Trek, they go, "The Picard," up at the screen. I'm sure they said that when they saw him playing Professor X. And then you got another class of you that they see Picard, they see as Professor X. That's another class of people, but we won't even go down that road. But the Olympics started, Don, today.
That's right. The opening exercise.
Didn't they just have the Olympics in Beijing recently?
That was 2008 Summer Olympics. This Olympics is strange because actually I was listening to a sports podcast about Beijing came to get the Olympics, and Almaty, Kazakhstan, and Beijing were wind up to be the finalists. Oslo was in the running, but according to the reports, the Olympic Committee made some very strange and just kind of ridiculous demands on Oslo in terms of what they had to do, how they had to address the Olympic Committee people. But they had to make sure that had an audience with the Queen or something. All these kind of ridiculous things. So, and then Oslo looked at that, and they also looked at the expense of what it would cost to hold the Winter Olympics, and they withdrew. So then it became Beijing and Almaty, Kazakhstan, and Beijing won with a lot of with some extra pressure and things like this. Here's the thing: this is the Winter Olympics in Beijing, which is reported that they get 4 days of snow a year, and this is the Winter Olympics. They are using man-made snow. They're having to do tremendous things to create the mountains. This one report on this podcast, he was saying that basically, if you go to that part of Beijing where they're going to hold the skiing events, this is all year round. It's a brown mountain, so they have got to manufacture this. Then I thought, I didn't hear it on the podcast, but I thought, so what is the temperature, the average temperature this time? I mean, part of it is Winter Olympics. It's
going to be warmer there than it will be here tomorrow.
I mean, having anything that's say 40 degrees or above when you're trying to hold your skiing events, it's like this doesn't make any sense to me because the conditions of the snow and being man-made snow are going to be very different. And I don't know how the athletes are going to perform under these conditions and stuff like that. But the preliminaries had already started before the opening exercise because the ceremony, because there's so many events like curling and some of the other things, you have to go through a lot of rounds to be able to eliminate some of the teams and individuals so you can actually get to the area where the stuff that'll really be televised. Now, I'm not going to be watching it. I can't watch it because I don't subscribe to Peacock. I don't have cable TV. I'm not paying for the Chi-Com Olympics. And there's a lot of controversy, much more controversy about this Olympics politically than there was about Beijing in 2008, because we still have the Uyghur problem, that is what came. And it's been interesting because, we talked about Coca-Cola and these other things at the beginning of the show, but Coca-Cola, the Wall Street Journal reported that, they're playing up their sponsorship big time in Beijing, but they're keeping a very low profile here in America because they don't want to draw too much attention to this. The Olympics too, because of the COVID protocols, there's no audience virtually. I think there's some locals are allowed to attend, but there's, you don't have the throngs of international visitors sitting in the stands. So this is kind of a weird situation they have put themselves in.
I wonder if, we have football games where we have people in the stadiums. I don't know why we can't do some sort of social distancing version of having some people. It's kind of weird being part of the Olympics and no one in the stands. They're not even letting the families of the athletes attend, and we have the Super
I
Bowl.
think they're going to be socially distanced on the medal stand.
Yeah.
And if and the athletes now they're at that point where, depending upon what they participated, if they test positive, a lot of athletes will not be able to compete in their specialty because of the protocols.
Yeah. And not only that, you have Democrats in the Biden administration telling these athletes, "Oh, keep your political opinions to yourself. Wait till you come back." So according to Joe Biden, these folks who were protesting, I believe it was police brutality at the Mexico games, Joe Biden would say, "Hey, don't do that. Wait till you come back to America." That is, it's like you have the world stage. Why not point out the Uyghur problem that China has? You may not come back if you point out the Uyghur problem that China has, or talk about Hong Kong. I mean, what would it be so bad if one of our athletes had a free Hong Kong shirt or something or whatever, and you've got these Democrats are saying, "Oh, don't upset the Chi-Coms." What do they say? The big man, is that the code word for Joe Biden? Big man, to get his 10%, Mr. 10%, so he gets the Biden crime family can. I tell you, something. I never thought, because the Clintons were kind of slim and shady, really fat all around, but the Biden crime family makes the Clinton crime family look like a bunch of saints, frankly. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I always associate the Clintons with the SNL scandals, but
that was before. That was before SNL was long before the Clintons even were on the map. Really, I mean,
I thought Hillary was a lawyer for some of the banks.
Yeah, she may have defended some of the banks, but I mean, the crisis actually started in the mid '80s.
Sure. I just meant that there were profits and such.
It cost Harry Hughes a chance of being a senator from the great state of Maryland. He lost the primary against Barbara Mikulski because Barbara Mikulski said he was responsible for the SNL crisis. And how soon we forget the Cardin family, who was tied in with the Levitts, while everybody else was only allowed to take $1,000 out of their account, I think every month or every week. I think it was a month. The Cardin family had got all of their money out of Old Court Savings and Loan. I wonder how that happened.
Well, one of these days we need to have a whole session on just China. But yeah, to your point about the protests and such, there is this. I don't know, the whole IEC thing too. They're just kind of focusing the wrong way. I think that committee is just a little bit corrupt in terms of they have unreasonable demands. There's, I think, a lot of money exchanging that shouldn't be exchanged. And then people like you look at the fallout for the people like like Greece when they hosted the Olympics, or these other countries that try to do what they can, and they have like all these these not almost a city that's like set up that was the whole Olympic theme park, and then nothing, it just goes to waste. There's such a an abuse of just resources, I think, in setting up the Olympic sports. Why can't we just slim it down and say, okay, we're going to deal with the athleticism of these people in their natural environment, and have just like how games are hosted, you got home and away games, like whether it be Canada or the Alps or whatever, there's so many other locations that can be handled for certain events. Even if you want to do ice skating and other stuff in China, fine. But why does it make sense to do like downhill skiing in a mountain in China, which never gets snow? I mean, again,
Oslo would have been much better for downhill skiing, by the way, doing it in Oslo.
Yeah, but isn't it gonna look weird? You see like this one hill full of snow, and everything around is like green and or brown or whatever the appropriate color is. But just the appearances is gonna look awful.
And the other thing I don't like them breaking up these Olympics making it every 2-year fairs. They do the summer. I liked it when I was a kid. We had the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics the exact same year, and something, I liked that because I'd have to deal with this nonsense every 2 years.
But again, I think part of it is the ISC, because you look at you'd have it hosted by the same country. Now it's like every 2 years it's a different country, so they get to make it a big fanfare again, as opposed to
the Winter and Summer Games are always two different countries. If you remember 1980,
I thought
The
they
summer.
were the same country when they did the same year.
No, remember summer games in 1980 were Moscow, while the winter games were in Lake Placid.
Okay.
You know,
Maybe I'm
and we
recalling it
had
different. I thought that those were the same country, but why
Yeah,
wouldn't
we
it be?
had-
It just seems to make sense. Like, you put all this effort for it, just do it the same year, the same country, and just have it like, the big celebration, and then the kind of you go back again. It's already set up. Why not just use the same, area, and then 4 years later you have a different country if you want. But get some reuse out of this stuff as opposed to just building everything up and then basically just forgetting about it forever.
Oh, doesn't LA host the Summer Olympics next year, or is it 2 years from now? 4 years from now?
I haven't kept up. I don't know.
No, because I think U.S. does host one of the Olympics. I'll say it's Los Angeles. Put in a bid.
I've heard that we are in the running, but I've not heard the specifics of like what's been.
I know the D.C. Baltimore area is out, which is a really good thing. I know a lot of people are upset that we're not going to host the Olympics here, but something. Traffic's pretty bad as it is. We don't need the Olympics here, frankly. We don't.
As Jeff alluded to too, though, I mean, the thing is that hosting an Olympics, as much as it's kind of a pride, for your country or for your, it's extremely expensive. The IOC's demands and requirements, just that you wind up building a lot of facilities. I mean, there are countries, there are places where they've built Olympic state, all kinds of venues, which were basically one
Los
time.
Angeles.
Beijing had the same thing. Beijing had that bird's nest thing, right, from 2008. There was no use for it afterwards. You spend millions of dollars constructing a facility that will then later on go to waste. And there's country after country that has gone through that.
Yeah, and I mean, Don, you go to Salt Lake a lot. They hosted the Olympics several years ago.
Yeah, I think
are they still using it?
I don't know. No, I think actually they turned part of that into some kind of park or even maybe shopping center or something like that or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, but a state like if they didn't do that, they'd just be sitting idle. I mean, even the Los Angeles Coliseum for a while was sitting empty, that they built for the 94 games. I mean, look at Atlanta. I mean, after they have hosted the Summer Olympics, they kind of just put the city on the map. You got all those crazy roads going everywhere and everywhere. And but we're actually out of time.
So here, just FYI here, just let's see here. So you're right, LA 2028. Okay, Milano Cortina in 2026. And I guess Paris is coming up in 2024.
Oh, it's nice. It's nice when the French get to host the games.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, I don't have a problem. Not every country can hold both sets of Olympics, right? Not everybody has a winter summer venue.
Yeah.
And Beijing would have been an example of that. Realistically, they really shouldn't be hosting the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, they could. I don't know why we can't do the Winter Olympics in Japan. They would be really well there.
Japan. Done summer. They've done winter and they've done summer.
Yeah.
I mean,
South Korea really could support the Olympics. Actually, South Korea, Seoul has really come around, and
they did the Winter Olympics in South Korea.
But it's been a while though, hasn't it? I mean, it's been longer.
It was a few years ago, but not that long ago.
I thought it was longer. I thought they were there. They had them before China had them. I would say 06.
I think 2016. 2016 was Sochi, right? That was Russia, and then I think 2018. No, they would have been 2016. They would have. The next one I think was Pyeongchang, Korea. After that, and then
Well, we could always go back to the Lillehammer, but we haven't had.
Maybe the winter in 2014 was Sochi. 2018 was South Korea. 2022 Beijing. I think that's what it went. Something like that.
So they're doing an Asian tour right now, the Olympics.
Yeah. But the other part of it is that this is also a marketing thing where people, if we ever get back to normal, this is where throngs of people internationally who will be able to come, fans will be able to come and watch the Olympics in these different places all around the world. And I'm sure there are lots of people who have traveled to many Olympics in the past. It's just that starting in 2020, everything went off the rails thanks to COVID.
And one final thought before we get to our final thoughts is that the Washington Redskins have a new name now.
Yeah, the Washington Commies.
The Washington what?
Yes, and
The Commies. Even
Hey, Don.
liberal sports writers. That's what's really funny. Even liberal sports writers are out there saying, "What are they doing? What were they thinking?" Because people will shorten that Commanders to Commies.
Yep. What was the name of the guy that dressed up as a Native American with the headdress and all that? What was his name again?
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to say, yeah, Chief Z is I think what they called him. But he's now got a new costume. That's what he's going to dress up as now.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that the memes as a result of this naming have just been all over the place.
I wanted to talk about the Commanders just for the ability to bring up Cobra Commander.
Yeah. So it'd be COVID Commander.
Yes. He's wearing a mask.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so we're at final thoughts. It's been a busy week, 2 weeks till Shamrock Shakes. A little less than 2 weeks, actually, but
11 days if they're on the 15th, right?
Yep.
yes. We have, and the 18th, we're doing our Shamrock Shake show, so Young should be back, right? I take it for the 18th?
Yeah. She's coming back.
You have some shakes showing up.
Back on the 14th or 15th, I don't remember.
There you go. You have some Shamrock Shakes showing up on the 15th. And but anyways, we're at final thoughts. Final thoughts, Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah. So sorry for missing last week. I've been kind of recovering from a bit of a cold, so you can see me coughing a little bit. I'm mostly over it, but still having a little bit of symptoms. So hopefully that'll go away soon. So I hope everyone is doing well and that no one else has caught any of the seasonal allergies or flus or colds this year. I don't know. I guess I did notice, again, I try to be kind of midline here. So I don't agree with the Democrats on a lot of their principles. One thing I did appreciate with Biden saying, though, was that he did acknowledge Intel's part in trying to bring some resolution to the chip shortages. So I mentioned that, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think, as far as that Intel was developing a new chip fab plant. And I believe it was in the East Coast. I can't remember if it was, I can't remember the plant is. But anyway, they're going to be doing.
Intel's they're going to build a plant in Ohio.
Oh, is it Ohio?
Yeah, they're going to spend like $20 billion or something like that.
Oh, that's different than I was heard. I thought there was going to be more like they got an existing chip fab in like Oregon or someplace around in that area. I thought, but regardless, Intel is I think stepping up to do to help out with the chip manufacturing.
And they have the good sense not to open up a plant in Oregon, even if they have one existing there.
Yeah, and they actually are going to be fabbing chips other than their own too, so that's a good thing. So I'm glad to see that kind of manufacturing coming back home. I've been bemoaning the fact for a long time is that we are so dependent upon foreign companies for chip fabbing. We don't have the ability to create modern semiconductors. All of our chip fabs are like old processes where they're the bigger die chips. We don't have the 4-micron and type facilities, and those cost a lot to manufacture. They really do. But if we don't step up to it, then we're always going to be behind and always going to be dependent upon other countries, which we mentioned before. If China has their way, Taiwan may be out of the picture. And they are a big chip fab manufacturing facility. So, that's going to be something we can hopefully offer the world, where we can start talking to people like Motorola and other chip manufacturers and get them to come back home and produce chips here. So anyway, I'm just excited about that, and that's not really a Democratic or Republican thing so much, but I'm glad at least that Joe is mentioning the fact that Intel is doing that, because I think people need to recognize that we need to bring industry home as much as possible. And I wish he would talk more about renewable energy in the sense of like next gen nuclear and those kind of green energy, not just so much on the wind and solar. But that's a different argument for a different time. So that's all I got.
Okay. Final thoughts, Don?
Yeah, a couple things. One, big news on Facebook the other day when they announced their earnings and their fact that for the first time in their history, they actually had fewer users than before, which had never happened. Combined with just their advertising revenue, they blame features for costing them dollars. The result was a loss in March. Facebook was on the becoming $1 trillion company, and now they are much further away. The haircut they got. It's kind of like I'm wondering whether or not the bloom is off the rose here a little bit because Berg on Facebook / Meta, they're going to in the metaverse. No guarantee that any of that's going to pay off. Advertising, model seems to be have a lot of holes in it. That also affected Snap, and Twitter as well. So all these companies that had built their advertising models on being able to track and resell data, they've all gotten hurt by Apple's new features. And so I'm not sure what the future of Facebook is, but it had done very well. I remember when the stock had an IPO, it was $20. It then fell rapidly to $10. And before they took their haircut, they had been pushing over $300 during the height during the pandemic, and they've been falling a little bit. But now I think the stock is like $230, and it could fall a lot further. So Mark Zuckerberg's lost a heck of a lot of money here in the last few days. I'm not sure whether he's going to make that back. But I think a lot of conservatives I saw reports, people saying, well, maybe that's because due to their anti-conservative policies. There's some people that probably have left Facebook because they've been thrown in Facebook jail so many times, and they don't like the policies of Facebook and getting censored or whatnot.
And the other problem
is a minuscule portion of the problem. The problem is, other issues, political issues there.
Yeah.
The second.
And they just did some new stuff. Yeah. I was saying they just did some crazy stuff. Like if you're doing like if you got a group and you want to see the group, it just kicks you out of your account and throws you into the group account. And it's such a pain to use now. And their ad policies are really bad considering, they're infringing on advertisement. Frankly, imagine if, CBS, NBC, ABC decided, hey, we're not going to show any Republican advertisement at all during this election cycle. Like
I said the other day on Facebook, you begin to wonder what's going on there because all of a sudden I started getting fed ads, where the link was for Act Blue because some of these candidates for governor in Maryland on the Democrat, all of a sudden they started showing up in my my feed, and I'm like, who are these people? And then I looked and I said, Act Blue? What the heck? What the heck did I ever do to deserve an Act Blue series of ads being pushed my way? So something is really amiss at Facebook. At this point in time, they look like they could be they're going to have some trouble here for the duration. My other thing is that we talked a little bit about racism earlier on. Spent quite a bit of time there, but one of the other things that has been bothering me here is just this uprising by a lot of the liberal sports pundits and sportscasters about the hiring practices in the NFL. I don't always agree with with the owners and what they do, but the owners own the team. They've got the money. They can do whatever they want when they want to hire and fire a coach. Should there be more minority coaches in the NFL? Probably so, but I don't know that there shouldn't be this litmus test. They complain and rail about the Rooney Rule, which requires them to interview minorities, before as well. I have to be in the mix and stuff like that. But it's like a lot of other things. Like we've talked about Supreme Court justices, the nomination. Let it be the best person, regardless of race or gender or whatever. I mean, if somebody wants to hire the first NFL head coach as a female, fine. If she's the best person you've got, fine. Let it be and let her break through and let her make some history. But the idea almost that because 70% of the players are black, that we need to have X amount of coaches that are black. This is ridiculous. that we shouldn't have this affirmative action, in pro sports like this. Let it just work out on its natural scene. Do we have bad owners in the NFL? Yeah, we have one in our backyard. He's a jerk. There's the Jacksonville Jaguar. He's a jerk. And things like that. They're stupid, but they have the money, and so with money comes the ability to be a jerk, and things like that. In the end, I think in my lifetime, somewhere here, before I pass on, I think we will see a sea change. I think there will be more qualified black coaches getting jobs, and that will change. But this railing about racism of the NFL owners, I think is just misplaced.
Yeah.
I really hate to see all this racism going on here in society. I mean, this is just overplayed.
So let me say real quickly too. I think there's going to be a natural balancing, as you say, Don, because I mean, you look at the athletes. At one point we were saying there are not enough athletes of color, but that's not an issue anymore because that's based upon talent and and skill. And the same should be said with coaches. I don't think the owners really care what race the coaches are as long as they have a proven record of success. So I think that just comes along with the environment, and as the demographics change or represented, that's I don't think the owners have a intrinsic bias against a certain ethnicity.
Right. Look at Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin has been there for what, 15 years or something like that. Very successful coach in Pittsburgh. Cincinnati had Marvin Lewis for a number of years. Even when they weren't very good, they stayed with it, right? Because he was a good defensive mind and everything like that. There have been some succeeded well, and others, and they got they had a bad season, they get fired, they move on. Happens in the college coaches ranks, it happens all around all the time. I think there will be. I mean, I'm old enough, and maybe you guys, remember a little bit, but I'm old enough to remember when black quarterbacks were virtually non-existent.
Right. Yeah.
And when they first started coming on the scene,
Randall Cunningham and Warren Moon were the first.
Yeah, Warren Moon was great. There was a guy who played for the LA Rams. I think it was James Harris. He was okay, but he wasn't great. But now you look around and you want the Lamar Jacksons. You want these people out there on the field. There's
RG3.
Kyler Murray. I mean, you got these guys that are just fabulous. And now people don't think about that as much. The natural course of events starts taking care of. The athleticism, the talent, the ability starts coming into play. Why is the NFL 70% black? What happened to all the white guys? Well, the black the black players are just great players, and they're the ones that the coaches say, I want to put the best team on the field, and that's going to be these athletes, right? Look at Major League Baseball. It's a lot of baseball players are coming from Latin America. We didn't have that when I was a kid. Fine, that's fine. We love watching these players play. I just want to have the best players on the field in these sports and the best coaches out there. So it will balance itself in time.
Here's the thing. I think we strive for excellence, and that's what we want. Whether it be employees, we don't like to, I would hire the best, whatever, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, as long as you know what you're doing. That's all we care about at the end of the day. Because if you're good, you're making me money, which is helps my bottom line. And that's how it is with these football teams. A coach, you could have a white coach who's losing a bunch of games, and you're going to fire him. You could have a black coach who's winning a bunch of games, and you're not going to fire him. Or flip the scenarios. You got a black coach who's really bad, and a white coach that's really good. It has nothing to do with their skin pigmentation. It has to do with their win losses in football, baseball. The Orioles, I'm willing to bet they'll have a manager shift before All-Star game, I think, unless some of that Oriole magic starts,
Well, that's a whole other can of worms, and only in the sense that none of us know when they're going to take the field this year, right?
Yeah, I know.
Normally about mid-February.
When the Shamrock Shakes come, pitchers and catchers are supposed to be reporting.
Right, the P's and C's go in, and that's the beginning of spring training. This is February 4th. It's Shamrock Shake Day, basically, is when they're supposed to come in, more or less.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's what happened. They've called for a federal mediator to try to help them move along, but these two sides are not close together.
Out of curiosity, what are they complaining about this time? Is it collective bargaining, or do they want some more money, or what is it?
Yeah, no, I mean the collective bargaining agreement had expired, so they need a new contract. And part of the in terms of player control, because the owners have definitely played a lot of tricks and games with trying to maintain control by not bringing up certain minor leaguers until they get another year worth of control. Even if they deserve to be on the roster 2 weeks earlier or a month earlier, they know what the timing is, and if you hold it off so they want to try to fix that. There's talk about money in a pool that can be awarded players for certain things, and there too. There are issues. I mean, there's manipulation going on by the owners, no doubt, but the players are trying to get what they think they deserve, but the players are going to try to manipulate them. So both sides
okay, these guys are playing a game that most people would do for nothing. Okay, they're making six figures easily. The worst pitcher in Major League Baseball is still cracking probably $1 million a year.
Well, I think the MLB minimum is probably about $1 million a year. So that you can't even feel the player, on a major league contract unless you're going to pay him $1 million a year to begin with. So you got that. But here's the thing: in the end, is that even though the players are holding out, and we saw lots of big contract signings before the lockout, because they knew that they needed to get. The players knew they needed to get those contracts in place before they knew this was going to happen. The problem is going to be is that both sides are doing damage to the sport, because the last time they had a strike and the thing, it took years before fans returned.
It cheated the Montreal Expos out of a World Series.
Right.
Remember the Expos were
it ended the franchise. It effectively ended baseball in Montreal.
Yeah, and they moved to Washington.
In Washington, I mean, our benefit in the sense, but I mean, these things are going to happen, and owners took a pretty good hit during COVID. No fans in the stands and all this stuff. Yeah. How much longer, can both sides get along? Players, they're going to need this money. At some point in time, they're going to have to come back. But if we get a truncated season, it's just not going to be the same, and it's going to take time to rebuild the trust. And we just are coming off of what I will consider to be a controversial selection for the Hall of Fame. Not getting Bonds and Clemens in and stuff like that, and stirring up the whole pot about steroid era and stuff like that, and all this. There's so much going on in baseball, that they really need to take the field and settle this thing.
And here's the thing. Honestly, play ball, negotiate while you're playing. Let Orioles magic happen this year. Let them win 100 games. I lowered the bar.
100 games over 2 or 3 years. Yes,
I've lowered the bar. This year. So, but we could talk all day. I tell you, we should have Brian on next week to talk about the baseball strike. Because Brian is a baseball aficionado. He believes in Orioles magic like I do, and he agrees with me with the Redskins. New name, new look, new mascot, same old losing team.
That's right.
But yeah. So I guess we're on to my final thoughts, or do you have any more final thoughts?
That's it. That's it. We're like severely into overtime here.
Yes, I know. It's almost 8. Wow, it's almost 8:30. We haven't done this since we were live.
Overtime.
My final thoughts will be really quick. One, visit Dwight Patel for moco.com. I am running for county council at large in Montgomery County. I'm taking public financing, so give me $5. That's matched, I think, 4 times. So, but yeah, go to my website, check it out. I'm going to be putting up later this weekend my answers to the Teachers Association's questionnaire they sent me. And boy, do they ask some idiotic questions. But I sent them 10 questions of my own for them to answer. So I wonder if they're going to answer. One of my questions is, Have you ever endorsed a Republican in the last 10 years? If yes, who? If not, why not? Why did you endorse Ben Jealous over Larry Hogan? And why did you endorse Anthony Williams over Larry Hogan? And why did you endorse Joe Biden over Donald Trump? They're going to love that one, I think, the most. But my final thoughts, visit my site. Check out Montgomery County Republican Club site as well. Last night, the club hosted our next governor, Kelly Schultz. Awesome event. We had a standing room only crowd, 40 plus people in the room, and well attended. And Kelly gave a great talk. And for the folks who are considering voting for Dan Cox, just remember Martin O'Malley. And if you want to go back to the days of Martin O'Malley, because I don't think Dan Cox can win the general election. That's just me looking at Frank. Frankly,
You're going to vote
use
for
some
Cox,
skulls.
you need to get a life.
Yeah, and also a vote for Dan Cox is a half a vote for the Democrat. I mean, there's a reason why the Democrats have done a push poll pushing Dan Cox. I mean, they've done this before. They did this in 2014, pushing Charles Lawler, as he's the only Republican that could win in their poll, the push poll they did. You notice the Democrats, they like to pick the weakest of the Republicans and say that's who they're pushing. I mean, Robin Ficker has a better chance of being governor than Dan Cox. Robin Ficker probably a much better governor than Dan Cox, too, but enough there. But I think we all know where I stand with Kelly Schultz, our next governor. But anyways, visit our site too, donate to Kelly too. Kelly's an awesome campaign. And my last final thought for the week is go Rams this weekend, but I'm not going to be watching the Super Bowl because it is, did they have a week between the championships and the Super Bowl? Have they had that, or did they just?
I mean, it's the February 13th. It's not this week, but.
Oh, I thought it was this week was the Super Bowl. Okay, they do have a week.
But see, that's the problem is that since I cut cable, I kind of lost track.
Yeah, you're not missing anything. I tell you, there's nothing on television worth watching. I mean, I used to really enjoy television. It used to be so much higher quality product of stuff they put on. Now, since there's so many channels, I think they can just throw crap up and expect people to watch me. These reality shows. I mean, I cannot believe how many stupid reality shows that are on the air and people actually watch these shows. You got Teen Mom 2, Teen Mom whatever, on MTV, and they really hype that stuff. Then you got Survivor, The Biggest Loser, The Loser. Oh, that's the Joe Biden story. That's an autobiography about Joe Biden, The Loser. But I mean, television is really, I mean, it's not what it used to be. There's a few good shows out there like the Goldbergs, Abbott Elementary School, because that just plays up to every stereotype I had about those public school teachers.
That show is actually kind of funny. I mean,
it is. I like it.
It's all done kind of in the format of The Office, right? I mean, that whole talking to the camera at times and all these things. It's pretty. I have to admit, I mean, that show is pretty funny. It's crazy. There's the other show. What's it called? Auto something, whatever. Anyway, it's from the same creators of Superstore, and it actually has one of the guys from Superstore in there, and it's about an auto company. And after I watched it, I thought, I don't think I can watch this. This is too outrageous for me. But Abbott Elementary with the whole education thing. That's pretty.
I really thought that first episode captured how public schools are run, where the teacher needs paints or glues, the other one needs a carpet or rug or whatever, and they get the money from the administration, and the principal spends it on a billboard with her picture on it.
Yeah,
I mean, that is what public school teachers are, Frank.
It's like a barter and trade system, Basically, one teacher has one thing, they try to barter with a different teacher to try to get.
That's what they ended up doing. I don't know did you watch that? Have you seen Abbott Elementary, Jeff? But that's actually what they ended up doing. There's this woman who basically can get her hands on anything. She got new rugs for everyone, and it was basically like, I guess her cousin was tearing down or renovating Veterans Stadium, so they got the Eagles rugs.
It's funny. My sister works in the education system, and it's pretty much like teachers, have to be creative in how they get resources because the school doesn't really provide a whole lot of resources, with scant exceptions. So it's really based upon the teachers to get their own resources for things they need. So It's unfortunate.
By the way, my final thought. This is a bottle of Coke that was given to me. Had my name on it. That's why I kept it, right? And look at it. 2 years.
10 years ago.
No, 2 years ago. Because that's when they did the. I really think soda should be in bottles, frankly. Although, as Bats mentioned to me, he is not buying sodas anymore because they're so cost prohibitive. As in, he was saying how the aluminum can shortage is the canned sodas are not showing up, and he doesn't like to drink soda out of plastic, which I'm like, And if you recall, Bats used to bring his own Diet Cokes to your place because he didn't like the bottled Diet Coke.
Right.
But Don, I'm sure you remember when we had bottled Coke that we bring back to this grocery store. So you get the actual glass bottle, and you'd get a big.
Actually, I've got one of those right here.
Bring back, and they just rinse them out and reuse them.
Look at this. This is a bottle of Coke. This is relatively old also. I think it's maybe before 2014, might be 2012 or something like that. This is part of a silent auction prize. And the soda in there is probably still good.
It's part of
I got bottles from the Orioles era that it's in glass bottles, and plastic bottles, you can't save them. You just drink it. And that's my final thought. Good night, everyone, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care.